Hey everybody, we're having a last minute technical problem. We had everything working half hour before the show, and several things just stopped working, and we're trying to figure out why. It always seems like there's something with online streaming shows, and it's a lot of different technical components that you have to stick together. So if you could hang tight, enjoy the loop of the title screen for another couple minutes, and then we'll get on with the show one way or the other. Okay, thanks everybody. Hey everybody, happy Sunday, and thank you for watching the show. As I said earlier, we tested about an hour ago, and everything was fantastic. And I got overconfident, went down, cooked some pasta, came back up, and well, the connection to the guests is not working. And I'm not even sure the. So we're trying to reconnect through Zoom versus the other chat that we had. And that doesn't seem to be working either. So this week, I have a special episode involving something rather esoteric, which is modular synthesizers. If you remember back in the 70s, synthesizers were these big racks on the wall with cables coming out and whatnot. And over the years, they got shrunk down into little chips. And, we all got used to that. Then that chips got shrunk down into laptops, and we were all using laptops. Well, there was a feeling that people had lost the physical connection. One reason why vinyl is selling so much right now is people want something physical. When you can have everything and everything online, what's the most special thing you can have, which is something tangible? So those plug-in cable synthesizers came back into fad and have been doing very well. And Franck Martin, my guest today, is one of the key people in that scene. And Frank going to type in here. Can folks hear me? Type in here. Can folks hear me? All right. According to Facebook, yeah, the transmission's going out. So I'm going to assume you guys can hear me. And you can hear the music. And I'm going to go ahead and play one of Frank's videos now. And then I'm going to try to get him on Zoom. I'm going to assume you guys. And we'll go from there. How about that? All right, everybody, that's example of Frank's work. That was for Tiny Desk, which is the NPR contest that a lot of artists bid to get on. That was his video shot out on the beach in San Francisco. And you can see all the wires coming out of the modular synthesizer there. And yeah, tweaking knobs, very physical. He got a battery pack and went out to the beach and filmed that with a 360 camera. If you're not familiar with this, there's a camera that's like a ball where you get everything around you and you can see in every direction. Now, you can also then publish that video from all the different directions onto YouTube and select 360 degrees. So in YouTube, you can actually grab the video and move around. And I'm going to show you an example of that. I'm going to try to get Frank is trying to get in here. Let's see if that works. I hear the ringtone. I hear the ringtone. Test, test, test. This is a Zoom test, meeting. Test, test. This is a... Hey, Frank's being admitted. Should be coming up any moment. Okay, I'm just going to message him, let him know he's admitted to the meeting. And there I see him.
You see me?
I can see you, and I can hear you. Better yet.
Awesome.
So, hey, we have Frank. Frank, I was saying to everybody that we tested everything a couple hours ago, and it worked perfectly. And so, of course, I got overconfident, went down, cooked some pasta. I should have left just everything running.
Could be.
And it might be that the conference tool that we were using has to be launched. We launched it first before the streaming last time. So it may be that when it takes over the camera OBS can take over the camera, the broadcasting software, and maybe not the other way around. So more testing, test. That's the theme of the week.
Indeed.
So we just showed your 1 minute promo video for the Tiny Desk contest. Could you talk a little bit more about Tiny Desk and how it all works?
Yeah, I've learned about NPR Tiny Desk contest, I think, from Eki Shola, who's also a local that participated in it. And I look at it, and so it's run by npr.org. They do Tiny Desk concert. I don't know, on a regular basis, they invite a very famous musician to play in a kind of acoustic way in their office. So it's very small. And then from there, then they created the Tiny Desk contest. So it's simple. You upload a video of less than 10 minutes, and there must be a desk somewhere. Or you're performing from your desk. So there's a ton of local musicians that are participating. And also you shouldn't be signed to a label or contract. So you're an independent musician. And from there, they listen to all the videos and will select a winner. But for me, it's mainly for the fun. That was interesting. That's a project that you have to do, and you have to render before a deadline.
Got it. Now, in this case, you said from your desk. So people's home studio, their workplace. I mean, what do they consider a desk?
Yeah, any desk. Any desk. So you need, because the format, if you look on the NPR the desk concert, you will see it's a very small place where people can perform. So you can't have a full band musician with all the guitars and everything. So it's more an acoustic type format or very small space. So yeah, so your performance should be more or less running from a desk. There are a little bit, lax about the style, but you shouldn't, the space that you take shouldn't be bigger than half of your bedroom.
Okay, so I don't have to have a desk myself, because in my studio, I literally don't have desk. I have stands all around me that I can move around and tripods. So it's not that you have to have a desk and fit to that desk, but you got to be able to, whatever you do in the video has to fit to their desk, right?
Yeah. So you should more or less fit on the desk format.
So if there are any independent artists out there listening and watching, there you go, Tiny Desk NPR. So I don't know if Tim's out there watching today, but I'm just thinking that the show that we did in San Jose a couple months ago with Jeff Osha on his radio show with the acoustic tour, that might be an opportunity for the two of us. Now, how is everything with Tiny Desk working with the coronavirus happening?
The video that I've seen, so, because it's, I don't know, I've seen many singers, songwriter, standalone musician. So that's not a problem. I've seen bands, so either some band had the time together because, it started before all the shutdown. So some people had time to do their videos. And some other, they did like you see sometime on YouTube, you record your parts separately and then you mix it together.
Now, do they use the video that you made in the show, or they were having people come there and perform?
No. So if you win the contest, then you will come to Washington at NPR HQ, and then you will perform. And also, I think they do some regional tour, but it's only for the winner. And I don't know. I think I looked recently. I think there's like 1,000 applicants.
And so, has there been any announcement on how they're going to handle this with coronavirus when a winter happens? Obviously, they're not going to fly him to Washington anymore.
Oh, I don't know. It's not like straight away. So usually, I don't know. The end of the contest is by the end of April. Maybe next weekend, I'm not sure. But it's by the end of April, and then it will take them, maybe 1 or 2 months to do the judging. And I guess, they have time to do it by the end of the year.
So this is an annual contest?
Yeah, it's annual.
Okay.
And it's always on the same time, around January, Feb, you should look for the announcement.
Got it. Cool. So again, folks, Tiny Desk Contest, you probably just missed this year, but be thinking about it for next year. I certainly am. It's a great
I
show.
think you still have a week.
I think I'm going to spend the next week testing for my next show and making sure. I'm going to let this one go, Frank. So I wouldn't want to muscle you out of the contest with my own video at the last minute.
Yes.
You'd never forgive me.
Yes, so it's okay. It's not overly complicated. You take your phone and then a good sound recording, and then you take it.
Cool.
And so the one that you showed was last year, and I created a new one for this year. And it's also drive a little bit of traffic to the video because a lot of people are looking at all the video and looking at the new artist.
Now, originally, I was going to just play this video the way we did the first one. And Frank helped me update how I was using OBS, so things moved a lot more streamlined from screen to screen. But in this case, this video, Frank, I can't really make the 360 aspect work without it being in the browser.
Oh, yes.
So you need I want to show people the browser. So this is going to be one of those moments where I drag something on screen. And so here's Frank's video for this year. Obviously, he couldn't get out to the beach, so he had to bring the beach to himself. So what you're seeing here is Frank performing at home, but look at this. You can actually grab the video on YouTube, paused or running, and you can check out the beach. So we got a green screen behind you, I take?
Yes, I use a green screen.
And then you've done this matting with this beach.
Yeah, that's a video I recorded when I was in Fiji last Christmas.
I was going to say, it looked like you were home
in
Fiji. Now, you grew up in Fiji.
Not really.
No?
Once after I grew up. Yeah, once after I grew up, after our studies.
Oh, okay.
But I spent 20 years there.
Okay. So you grew up and then you went to Fiji and you lived 20 years in Fiji. And this beach is a real beach.
It's even a sandbank. It's on the reef. So you need to take a boat to get there.
Got it.
I did the boat behind the window.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're doing this 360 thing. How do you hide the boat?
Yeah, because there's only one boat and it's behind the window.
Oh, behind the actual window.
Yes.
I see. So the boat's beached up here, and you just position the video that you made of you playing in such a way that there's no boat.
Yeah, and
that's really cool. That's a great idea.
You can see a little bit the people on the side of the window. If you look.
Over here, maybe?
On the left side.
Got it. And is this zoomable? 360 environments?
I'm not sure with YouTube, but you can run 360 video using VLC, and yes, you can zoom in and do a kind of teeny planet effect.
Got it. And one aspect of this is I've been getting a lot more conversations about virtual environments. I don't know how many people on this call ever heard of Second Life, but that was back in the 2000s. It was a whole virtual world online where you logged in and made yourself another person, blah, 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 and you went to bars and dance parties and teleported into people's mansions and all this kind of stuff. People build whole realities on that. And now I'm trying to think of the name of the new platform, Unity. So a lot of people are in Unity right now, and I'm fascinated with how coronavirus is going to impact virtual reality worlds. We've been talking about having virtual reality worlds that we all interact in since the 90s, and people have been putting goggles on and all this sort of stuff, and it's never really fully taken off. When I was in Paris in October, I got to do some Unity worlds that my friend Eric Wenger made in his Artmatic software, and it was with the Oculus. So it had these two paddles and the big face piece, and it was amazing. He cleared the room, put me in a chair, and so I was there in the middle of the room, flying around in his landscape and whatnot. So these virtual environments, I think, are going to become more common.
Yeah, and so on this video, it's a 360 video, and now you can find some affordable camera. I've got a camera, I think costs about $300, which I've got just enough resolution so that the 360 on YouTube looks good. You need a higher, so this camera is like a 5.7K, and that gives you roughly a 720p rendering on the screen. So that's just about the right resolution. And they are becoming affordable. But what I did also is that I use ambisonic sound. So ambisonic is a way to map the sound in a 3D space. So because that was a quadraphonic recording, so for channel, so I place a speaker around the video. And when you move, then it should change the mixing of this channel, like if you had 4 speakers around you and when you move your head. So that's the ambisonic. That's not a new concept, but because we've got 360, because people have got headset, everybody has a phone with some headset, so it's becoming popular. And as you say, you've got Unity, and if you look at Dolby Atmos, and I think there's another format, I can't remember, they are moving to object-based sound. So instead of having a source like at your home theater, 5.1, so you've got 5 speakers plus a subwoofer that are in the room, and whatever sound, for instance, on the movie, whatever sound, you will try to render it for these 5 sources, so that it works. In Atmos or Unity, it's an object. So you place your object and you say, this is my sound source. And it doesn't matter how many speakers you've got in the room, the system will render that object sound to fit your speaker array.
That makes sense, because even with headphones in Unity, when I was in Paris, Eric had set up all these objects in Unity, in the landscape, that he had written different music in Metasynth and assigned to that object. So as I would get near the object or interact with the object, I felt like I had 360 sound as well.
Yes. So so that's a purpose object-based sound. So that's interesting, and I don't know. It's interesting because you may have seen this farm of people playing online game and they can't have speakers because that would be too loud. So they're all on headset. But if you play a role player game, you would like to know when somebody shoots you in the back. So the sound effect needs also to come from your back so you can turn around. So that specialized sound is coming from the game because people want the extra advantage of sound location.
Got it. So you can get that sense through the stereo headphone set. Okay, so I'm wrapping my head around this concept. So rather than having, I don't know how many people have 5.1 at home, or multiple speakers at home, with starting with DVDs and Blu-ray and some television now. So you have a center speaker for the center, your left and right speakers, then you got your back speakers, so that when sounds happen in the room, you get a sense of what direction it's coming from. But what you're saying, literally, like each object, rather than coming from a speaker in the room, you're wearing headsets, the object's relationship to you determines where in the stereo headphones that sound's coming from.
Yes.
Something like that?
Yeah. So when you've got an headset, so that's what they call binaural sound. So imagine that instead of having a headset, we place one microphone in one of your ear, and we record the sound as your ear is receiving it. So bouncing on your shape of your ears too, so it will be distorted. And so you record this sound, and now if I put a headset and I play it back, you will have the same sense of spatialization, because the way the sound arrives to your ear. So when, for instance, when you've got an object in the distance, the sound will arrive to one ear before the other, which will allow you to give a location into the horizontal space. There will be also phase issues. There will be also volume difference, because if it's on your right side, your left ear will hear it, but it will be muffled because it will go through your head.
Okay, got it.
And you've got a sense of height, and it's interesting. I was watching some video about it. So, like for instance, dogs don't have a sense of height. We have a sense of height because the way our hair is shaped. So if the sun comes
Sorry,
up,
what was that?
we've got a sense of height.
Okay.
Where if the sun is coming from up or down, because the way our hair is shaped, it will bounce against the side of our hair, and depending if it's high or down, it will be slightly different.
Got it. And the word that was tripping me up was ear, because you put a slight H on it, so it becomes here.
Yes.
And I find this funny because I've been studying French for the last 6 months. For those who know, I've been helping a buddy of mine in Paris reboot his software company. So I figured I'd study at least some basic French. And it's because England and London and Paris is so close, there's a lot of shared words between French and English. And then French is also a Latin-based language, and then also a local Frankish language. So it's this real interesting mix. And one of the things that we as Americans do is we will call a person named H-E-R-B, Herb. But when we go to put something spelled H-E-R-B onto our food, we drop the H and call it herb. And this is because in French, they drop the H. So hotel is hotel, right? So I find it very ironic that you're putting an H in versus taking one out.
I'm getting confused because I don't know, the H in English is a little bit difficult, and I'm getting confused between hearing and ear.
Yep. Hearing, earring.
Yes.
Yeah. So
the H is tricky in English, as well as the, but that's then you can get it. And,
versus I have to say, some French is definitely easier than English. Can be very direct, and then some things in English are simpler than French. So I see advantages to both, and you definitely see how the interplay is. For example, according to Duolingo, there's no word for pet in French.
Pet? It's animal de compagnie.
Yeah. So the animal longer. Companion. So the is an interesting one, where English is easier, the. But French, you have masculine, feminine, and plural.
Yeah. One funny word that I've learned. Do you know to say potpourri in French?
Potpourri?
Yeah, in French.
No.
Medley.
Medley. That makes sense. Medley, a collection of stuff.
Yeah, but the word in English is French, and the word in French is English.
Oh, wait. Potpourri. Yeah.
Yeah, in
Interesting. I
English
always
you say,
assume that.
it's a potpourri of a song, and in French you say, oh, let me play you a medley. You know,
Huh.
je vous joue un medley.
I
So
would
there's
say
a
it's medley and song here as well.
yeah. But it's a way of how people are using each other words to be a little bit fancy.
And also, there's certain contemporary words that have been adopted into French, but then other ones not. So the portable, the portable phone, right? Email got into French.
Yeah, they try with a courriel, as a courriel. Sometimes you see that.
Okay, so they've tried to create a French word for it.
Yeah, I think it came mainly from Canada, Quebec, but also France. But there's so many people are using email.
It's definitely the French lessons did e-mail, but computer is ordinator.
Ordinator.
Okay, so some interesting French lessons here on Sunday Night Live.
Yes.
I'm going to check the questions here and see if anybody's sent. Everybody says loud and clear. For some reason, the Restream chat window is only your entries, Frank, and me. So I have that to work out this week. Let's see. Joe says everything coming beautifully. Hey, Sue. Sue is in Marin. I'm waving hi to Marin. As folks know, I've moved to an area that rarely gets above 65 degrees. So I'm thinking about those days at the Grateful Dead's restaurant there in Marin. Terrapin Crossroads, laying in the sun. I'm sure it's warm by now. Michelle from San Jose, longtime friend. We give a shout out to you. Corey is watching. Corey knows Frank. How I met Frank. Let me think. How did I first meet Frank?
Was it at the Armory Club?
I don't think so, because I did resonant frequencies. I think maybe we chatted online because I wanted to play resonant frequencies.
Yeah, could be.
And then Tim and I played resonant frequencies. If you want to see that show, beautiful, huge stage, incredible visuals. It's up on the Audio Terrorist YouTube channel. Please subscribe. And did that. Then you told me about Resident, and then I went to Resident. I met Corey. And there on if you go to audioterrorist.bandcamp.com, the interview that Corey had with me is up there. And Corey and I just really clicked and
maybe also it was via Balanced Breakfast.
It might have been Balanced Breakfast. Was that at a coffee shop there in San Francisco?
Yeah, I went one or twice at the coffee shop in San Francisco. So
that's probably it. And then maybe from there I found out resonant frequencies, hooked up with that, and then got resident in San Francisco.
Yeah. I think also, I have a feeling we really met on my first show at the Armory Club. Well, I think when we put all the dots together.
So maybe we'd engaged online, but it was at the Armory Club that we actually started chatting before your show.
And we may have met at Resonant Frequencies also.
So for folks watching, just do some shout out. See my sister's on here out in the Central Valley, California. Chris down in LA. If you didn't see last week's episode with Chris, check it out. It's available on the KALIB YouTube channel. And that Chris is a horror, scary movie soundtrack writer and does a bunch of other albums stuff. And so check out that episode. And let's see. And Amber, wave hi. Gary, waving hi. Gene, waving hi. Now, a little thing on Gene. Gene tunes into these all the time, and I think it's awesome because I've known Gene since I was a child. He's an uncle of mine, and we used to go boating in the Sierras all together. So it's very awesome that he's tuning into these. You mentioned the Armory Club. So I'm going to show the trailer for that. And so the Armory Club is one of the places that Frank does live shows. And here's a short trailer. Welcome to the official Audio Terrorist YouTube. All right, we're back. So tell us a bit about. Well, let me back up a bit. So Resonant Frequencies is in Oakland, California. Happens at Waves. What, Soundwave? What's the name of that studio?
Yeah, Soundwave Studios in Oakland.
And big, huge stage, big projection screens. It's fantastic performing there, and definitely an honor. And it is a open mic where you just show up, sign up, go up, do your thing, and all these wonderful electronic musicians. Quite a range. I was playing theremins. You can see some theremins back here, and then Frank has a theremin in his video on the beach there. And these are devices from the 1920s where you put your hands near them and play music, sort of. And so we did a show there with that. But there were people on guitars with electronic pedals. There were people with modular synthesis. It's really dynamic. So if you are in the East Bay or anywhere near Oakland, once this coronavirus thing is over, I highly, highly recommend it. It's one of the coolest open mics I've ever played at. And then in addition, in San Francisco, in the Mission is Resident in a coffee shop art gallery space that's very neighborhood, community focused. Get together and have a glass of wine and watch some very experimental pieces. And then in addition, Frank has his secret show at the Armory. So how did that get started?
Before we go there, there's also a PICT, which is on Wednesday that Corey organized. So Resonant Frequency is the first Sunday of the month, and it's still running. They are doing it remotely now, which is quite a technical feast. Resident is on the second Tuesday of the month, and we ran it with pre-recorded video, but the open mic feeling. And there's a PICT. I think PICT has made a pause and they're looking at redoing it remotely. And there's the show that I'm co-organizing with a friend. So I go to this bar, which is the Armory Club, which is opposite the Armory. So it's not the Armory, but it's the Armory Club, which has got a nice vibe. So I went there, so I know the people there. And then one day I said, well, I want to do a show. And I know that they have got a place downstairs, and I had rented before for a birthday party. So I asked the manager, hey, I see you've got some DJ coming in. So what about if I do a show there? And he said, yeah, of course. So that was the first one that we did. When was it? January 2019. And because it was on the Armory Club, so modular synthesizer, 3 performers, and that's with my friend. And I said, well, maybe we could bring something a little bit interesting. So I asked some friends to do a shibari performance. So basically a suspension with some ropes. And I would match music with the performance. So that's the interesting part. And we've run 3 shows. So one in January last year, one in June, and one in February. And so that's quite interesting. This nice mix of modular music, because modular music is a little bit improvised. You've got some voice, you've got some patch, you know roughly when you turn this knob, what does it do? But also you go with the feeling of the moment, and having kind of a dance. The suspension, you can take it as a dance. he has got some part and some movement. So mixing the two together is nice. On the sad note, the performer Jackhammer that has helped us doing this stuff passed away in early March. So there will be a memorial, and I think that could have been also one of his last performance live. So there will be a memorial, and I still have to process the video and put it online.
So he performed at the third show?
Three of them.
All three of them. Okay.
Yeah, he performed all three of them. He had a different partner, but he performed all three of them, and he was very nice to when I say, "Hey, trying to do this show. Would you like to do the suspension at the same time?" And he said yes. And on the first one, he came before, so we did a rehearsal. We took some pictures so we could do the promo. So it was really nice and very helpful. So a little bit sad to miss him.
My condolences on that. I enjoyed all the shows. Sadly, I did not make it to the last show, so I look forward to seeing the video. I was actually in San Jose and just couldn't quite get up to San Francisco that day. So again, look forward to seeing the video, and glad that he got to perform in all those. And we were talking about this earlier, and it was, something else that was going on. It wasn't related to the coronavirus, correct?
No. It's
okay.
It's not related to us before that. And I think we had a good feedback of the show, because I think, you bring to communities the electronic music modular scene with the, San Francisco Folsom street fair scene together, and then do a mix. And then you create a little bit something unique that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was a real neat mix of crowds. Of some folks who were there for electronic music, some focused on the arts, some focused on the sort of, San Francisco fetish community and the suspension thing. And I think the suspension thing has become, I don't want to say this word. It's a dirty, dirty word. Mainstream. You see a lot of rope work, certainly a lot of silk work in, circus performances now and whatnot. And you retain those elements in the space, but also you've let it have that vibe of the San Francisco scene. So I certainly saw a diversity of folks there.
Yeah, that's quite nice. And also the location, the Armory Club has got also this nice vibe. And it's a nice,
absolutely gorgeous. While you were talking, I put some of the pictures, brought the browser down, put some of the pictures over to your right. I think it's one of the most gorgeous, nightclub speakeasy feel that I've ever seen.
Yeah. I like the atmosphere and the people there.
So
and there are a few other shows, so not at the moment, but they have been quite active in having other people to come and use the space.
I'm going to check the messages here, see if anybody has any questions for Frank. We got folks watching. And if you're just tuning in, because I'm seeing people start dropping in, this is an interview with Franck Martin, who is a really cool dude. And Frank does modular synthesizers. You can see them in the background right behind him. All these units putting cables in there and building patches. And this modular synthesis scene has really taken off for the last, 4 years? 4 or 5 years?
Maybe a little bit longer than that. There was a resurgence, but I think here in San Francisco there was a kind of the long-running kind of monthly event was Robot Speak, the Church of the Super Surge. So Robot Speak is a shop that sells electronic music instrument and modular synthesizer and Moog and Buchla and sequential Dave Smith. Buchla and Dave Smith are local to San Francisco. And they were running a show every month, and from there, Resident and Resonant Frequency started as an open mic and more recently peaked. And also a friend also was running a show in San Jose called Binary Society, also data stuff. But that was the kind of show that you could have, and it's electronic open mic, so it's a performance. So usually you don't have any DJ set, but you know. Laptops are depends on the place, allowed or not allowed. But
yeah. It's funny because I used to
but
work with,
yeah,
I actually, the university I went to had a Buchla. And for those that don't know a Buchla, in 70 synthesizers, there was two branches of where to go with synthesizers. And one was these large, massive modular synthesizers. And the other was Bob Moog's idea of having more presets. This is not fair to a lot of other synth manufacturers, but in general, it came down to, should synthesizer music be more ambient, experimental, or should it be, try to sound like a flute or try to sound like a piano and have presets and whatnot. So, and be easier to play. And the Buchla there didn't even have a pressing keyboard. The Moog had a real piano keyboard, but I think Buchla at the end allowed there to be this little metal touch keyboard thing, so you could do some notes on it, but you'd be tweaking the knobs and whatnot. And so I got started there, and then we went, again, as I was saying at the beginning of the show, we went from these big machines down smaller and smaller and smaller until you had these little chips with presets. And instead of tweaking knobs and putting patches, you were just kind of scrolling through menus for hours of presets, right? I have my keyboard over here, my motif, and I'm still scrolling through the presets to try to figure out what they are. And then that all got condensed into the laptop. And now you had soft synthesizers, so you didn't have to haul this big keyboard around to shows. All you had to do was show up, put your laptop up, and the whole world was in there. And it's like a generation grew up where that was no longer cool and edgy, but was just every day. Every kid grew up with a laptop. So why would you want to do a laptop show? And it became kind of an anti-laptop world. So the modular, I get that feeling because I did theremins, but I did laptop at resonant frequencies. And I also did it at resident. And I didn't get any negative vibe there, but I can imagine that some people are purists and they're like, no, you've got to do this with, you have to plug wires. And we're coming up to the end of our time, but I just want you to briefly talk about, like, you have to build all these patches with the wires. How do you remember where you stuck the wires?
Usually I don't, but I don't know. The way to remember the patch is basically to take a picture. So you take a picture of your patch, and what the modular brought me is to better do sound design. So I hear a sound and I've got a rough idea, know how I could make that sound. So it's not necessarily make a melody and the chord and the succession of chord, but just that specific sound.
Which is a whole different headspace.
Yeah, sound design. So that's interesting, and that's sometimes nice on the modular. It's an ephemeral. You build a patch, and the patch disappear.
I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could do that. Spend like hours building a patch with the sound, and then just pull the wires, and it never happens again. But I guess it makes live performances that much more unique and special.
Yes, and I don't know if you. I see some people that are touring with their patch, so they may have like 5-10 show, and each show will be different. So it's still the same music, it's the same theme, but it will be different because they will do something differently in the chaining of things and stuff like that. So that's what is nice. And once you finish, you tear down your patch and you create a new one. You can come back to previous patch, but I think people just move on.
That's very different headspace than sequencing out based on presets. I'm going to check the chat room here. Anybody have questions for Franck? I know this is, modular synthesizer is a whole unique beast, and Franck is very versed in this and versed in the scene. So if you have any questions, now is your time to ask a modular synthesizer king. I'm mainly seeing in the chat that just people are watching. I'm going to ask if anybody has questions for Franck.
Yeah, and I would say on the modular synth, there's no right or wrong way of making music as long as it sounds good. So laptop, modular synths, electric guitar. If it sounds good, it sounds good. It doesn't matter about the tools to reach there. So, but yeah, it's interesting. So it's kind of, you pick up an instrument and you will try to learn it, and that's lead to some creation that shape a little bit your sound at the same time. The instrument shape your sound and your style, and vice versa.
Speaking of guitar, I want to wrap up today's episode with the premiere of one of my videos, and that is not modular synthesis. I've gone more, I'd say, this last couple of years towards the guitar. I have some electronic pieces, but starting with 5 years ago with Audio Terrace, we started adding heavier guitar parts. And then this last year, I've been getting more kind of folk-inspired guitar parts. So this is kind of a blend of electronic, 80s rock with some folk. And I figured we'd go out on that video today, so get a premiere on that. I want to thank you, Franck, for...
And before you wrap up, part of my experimentation, so I've done, I don't know, with a patch about 6 tracks, and they are quadraphonic, and I put them into a DVD, and it's all on Bandcamp. I just released it today, so you can grab the DVD and have a quadraphonic at home.
And you are at peachymango.org.
Yeah, and from there you find the link to everything. But at the moment, the DVD is on Bandcamp.
I'm going to bring this down to the screen. So peachymango.org. This is...
I'll do it like this. Here is a DVD.
And so that's a DVD. It's an audio DVD or video DVD?
Video DVD. So you get the 5.1 sound, and you can play it on your home theater and have a quadraphonic feel.
Very cool. So if you want to hear Franck's work, watch it at home, see modular synth, go to peachymango.org and also buy one of his DVDs. So if you have a home studio setup, big screen TVs are pretty cheap right now. And Amazon will ship you a 5.1 surround system. And you can have the full Franck Martin experience. Now, you brand all your stuff as Franck Martin or FM?
Yes. Yeah, Franck Martin. Well, okay. FM Plus One is just the name of the show, that because Plus One is the name of my friend.
And YouTube keeps wanting to stick David Bowie videos over your videos, so apologize about that.
I don't know. That's a good reference, maybe.
All right, folks. I don't see any... Oh, okay. We got a question for Franck. So if you're holding on for the premiere of the Audio Terrace video of the next single, hold on one moment. Franck has a question here from Chris Wurzig down in LA. As I mentioned, Chris was my guest on my first episode and does soundtracks as well as albums with his band No Carrier, and an upcoming band that only you will see in the video of last week's episode because they're a secret. And if you watched last week's episode, you got let in on the secret. All right. So he says to Franck, what are your favorite modules and what do you use all the time?
What do I have? There's a couple of modules. So at the moment, I'm fond of Morphagene. So Morphagene is a kind of, it's a tape, but digitally rendered. So you can have a sample, and then like in the tape, you can slow it down, play it backwards at different speed, etc., and then mess it up. So it's the digital version of a tape recorder. So people used to do music concrete using tape, and you splice the tape and you put it all together. I've got also a sequencer dual voltage from Verbose, which is nice because it's I like it to call it a dump sequencer. When you put the slide, that's where the note is going to be played. I've got from Mutable Instrument plates, which is a very gratifying sound source. It's got a different models. And what else also? There's one, sometimes I don't have trouble to put my head around it, which is Cloud, which is granular synthesizes. So it takes the sound, cut it in piece, and then mess up with all the piece. Still don't fully understand what's happening. I just turn the knob till I hear something that I like. But yeah, I tend to do at the moment a little bit more like music concrete. So I've got a sample that I play normally, and then I will dial into the sample. There's one piece that was fun that I did for last year, KZSU, the Day of Noise. So I recorded Caltrain arriving at the station, and that's what I play. And then after I started to dial parts of it and put it as my rhythm in the piece.
Got it. Now, so this is a modular synth, but with a sampler component?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can have sampler, you can have, I've got a kind of vocoder from Moog, also SpectraVox, which is, changing my voice. So it's interesting also to play with that.
Now, I did do a granular synthesis piece. It appears on which album? One of them in the 90s. It was done in the 80s, but appeared at the end of one of the Audio Cherish albums in the 90s. And it was all granular synthesis, where we took all these wave samples. So for those not familiar, music is represented usually by a sound wave visually, and you can go into software and chop it up. So we literally did all this sampling, and then we chopped little pieces of, like, say you have 20 samples. You have a dog bark, the train horn, someone yelling, and then you go literally take like one wave cycle out of each of these samples and stitch them randomly across each other. So the wave frequency is blending all those different elements into new sounds. So that's one granular synthesis that I performed with Kedar Roy. Yeah,
and this creates some interesting weird sound. And if you put a feedback loop and a reverb, then that's amplifying the sound. And you can do a pitch shifting also.
I'm showing some pictures of you playing gear here from your website.
Yes. I'm watching the YouTube feed, so I see them in delay.
That's a cool one. So one thing I've seen with this scene is a lot of colored lights are used, not only in the room, but sometimes built into the modules on the rack.
Yeah, well, there's plenty blinking light, but also there's a ton of very nice visualists that are using also analog synthesizer, but for visual. So remember how people were doing special effects on the TV in the 60s. So they've got the new version of this gear, but it's all analog processing of video signals. So the same way with patch cable and stuff like that. And that creates some awesome visuals. So you can go perform, and then you've got a visualist that will color your piece.
I just think it's so fascinating that we've gone to this stage where things are so easy, where you can have the entire library of world music at your fingertips, the entire library of films and TV shows, again, at your fingertips, that it's driven this almost counter-reaction where people want to explore analog or go back to something that's analog versus digital.
Yeah. I think the analog part is because you've got knob and button, so you've got a physical interaction. But I think when you perform live, it's a connection that you have with the public. So it doesn't matter the tool that you are using, but you want to have a connection. Sometimes I joke, I could just come and play an MP3 and fake it all. But if you're here in the moment and you make the connection with the public, that's what people are. That's why they're coming out. Otherwise, they could just play your piece of music on Spotify. They want to see it live and make the connection with the artist, and the artist making the connection with the public and interacting.
Yeah, that's definitely the question around DJ culture, right? when you had a lot of gear DJing and you're putting your hands on the vinyl records and spinning, and is a whole different story. But with laptops, yeah, you could pre-program the whole show, and
But even the good DJ, they perform to the public, so they've got piece and they will adapt it to the public, and they've got some, launch pad and stuff like that. So it's behind the laptop, but also they adapt to the mood.
that's a good point. Is in this digital analog argument that I've been hearing since the '80s. The reality isn't. It's not about digital or analog. It's about connection and interaction.
Yeah, the performance. People come to see a performance, so that's what they want to see.
And do you find that as you're working during a show that you make certain decisions in reaction to the room?
Yes. Usually when I prepare a patch, so I do it at home, and when I rehearse my patch, I go very fast, and so usually a patch is about 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and I could do everything like in 5-10 minutes, and when I perform it, then I slow it down and I decide. So I know all my voice, I know all the transition that I can have with the voice and all the modification and effects and how they interact between each other. And then during the performance, then I will choose what I want to do next.
Got it. So you're
and
actually...
I slow myself down. So, long transition, no rush.
I was just thinking that the connection between the shibari work, for folks that aren't familiar with it, shibari is a Japanese art form in which you use rope and body suspension. And I've seen some pieces where literally it was like a flow, like the rope went on the body and started looping in, and it just kept intertwining and then falling apart. So it was one continuous flow with this rope. A lot of performances are like, here, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to put a leg here and an arm here, and now the person's flying through space. But this one performer, he had planned the flow of all of the ropes so that it almost looked like he had never undone everything. It was like he was doing and somehow ended up completely untying. So it started slowly tying, more tying, and somehow it just pulled all apart at the end. And I'm wondering, I hadn't really thought about it, but your ad really kind of displays the modular synthesis cables with bits of rope, and that it's a very similar process.
Yeah, and during shibari also there's a movement. I don't know, like when you do a song, you've got the verse, chorus, the break, and then you finish by I don't know, a verse or the chorus. There's movement in the song. So also in the shibari piece, you've got movement. You've got the first tying up, and then you've got the hosting, and then you've got the suspension. Sometimes you do an inverted suspension, and then you've got the release. You have to bring the person back down slowly on the floor, and then you've got the untie up, and I don't know what they call the aftercare. Getting everybody to relax. So, it's physical, and so that's the various movement. And then with the music, you try to adapt to this movement because they've got different mood.
And you have some photos on your website of the shibari?
Yes.
Was it...
if you, I think if you go down, you see the look for a ticket and information. On the big YouTube screen that you see, the big picture first.
Oh, this one?
I don't know what you're looking at.
Oh, sorry.
I'm looking
Yeah, for folks that don't know, this all goes out on delay. So you're watching our past. So sometimes if we're monitoring the show, it gets a little weird.
So it's not the YouTube video, but just below you've got more information and ticket. And if you click on that, you get to the page and you've got all the...
Got it. Now this is some mature theme images, maybe. It's pretty tame. Yeah, but you can see there... No, it doesn't pop up. But anyhow, you can see they're using the synthesizer here and all these wire patches. And I do see a laptop in the picture. And you see a person being bound with rope here and then suspended. And I've had friends who do a lot of rope work that just describe this freedom of feeling like you're flying to the music.
Yeah, it's it's quite physical because it's sometimes some parts are a little bit difficult to do, and also it's a let go. Sometimes it's a kind of meditation and yoga.
This is something that for folks out there listening that know my history within different communities, that I think is a big misunderstanding about the kink community, is there's this level of yoga in it, and about poses and breathing and constriction is just a method or of releasing or letting go, and they're just different techniques. And adding a live soundtrack, that's pretty cool to it, versus just playing some song. But the actual integration. Well, I'm going to double check the chat lists. We've been going over each week. If you folks want to indulge, I still see people joining at this after the official time is over. So why not continue? Frank, you got a few more minutes?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Let's see. Any more questions?
It's a stay at home, so I've got nowhere else to go.
Well, you could want to jump into your virtual world.
Yes. Or do some cooking eventually.
I'm going to actually text everybody your website as well.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so as we were talking about the community of electronic music, resonant frequency. So I performed on the last one, and it was all remote. So the organizer did awesome work to coordinate between the audio performer and the visual performers and stream it all live. It was on YouTube. So resonant frequency. Resident we had pre-recorded, and I'm part of one of the co-hosts. So I'll do that again next month. And then they speak, and from time to time you've got a robot speak, the Church of the Super Surge. And there's about what, I don't know, and I see we've got some Slack channel and place where we can meet. And I think there are about 40, 50 people in the area. And if you want some famous modular synthesizer in the Bay Area, Susan Chani is the one who's got, that's been here from the beginning, and she's got enormous credential. More recent, you've got Arbeni, who's doing ambient piece. And also you've got Modular Princess. She does a mix between modular synth music and indie music. So it's quite nice.
Now, even though Wendy Carlos was switched on to Bach, that was a Moog that she worked on. It was a modular, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a modular. Well, at the time, the electronic music was modular. You would have an oscillator and a filter, and so that was all modular before they started to have pre-patch. I don't know who were the first synthesizer, but if you take the Prophet 5, that was the first one that had, that was polyphonic with preset and still analog on the sound creation. But there was a microcontroller to make sure that all the, I think 8 oscillators are all tuned to the same sound.
For those that don't know the history of electronic music and keyboards, so monophonic is when you have a solo singer. Polyphonic is when you have 3 singers doing harmony. And so if you play a piano, you play more notes than one at a time, early synthesizers couldn't do it. They could play one note at a time. And so polyphonic, it was really breakthrough because suddenly you could do something like a piano and actually play chords, multiple notes at one time, create harmony as you would have with multiple singers. Also, the ARP, was it 2600?
Yeah, the ARP 2600.
The first one that started having presets or starting places with synthesizers and started coming into popular music, such as 80s music, that's heavily influenced by those synthesizers in the late 70s. I listened to a lot of Vangelis as a child, Tangerine Dream, but certainly Gary Newman, The Human League, on and on and on, the late 70s, early 80s synthesizer pop music. And that was really dramatic and different at the time. But I heard someone say recently that all music is electronic now. I think it was Gary Newman when he was talking about how Billboard 100 kicked him off the top 10 electronic list. His last album charted in the top 10, and he was very excited, and then Billboard kicked him off because he wasn't electronic enough.
Yeah, that's funny. I don't know. There's a site, I forgot what's the name, but I think, there was a kind of a genome project of music, and you've got like 1,000 genres. So, within electronic, I don't know, there's like 100 subgenres, and sometimes I don't understand the difference.
Yeah. Again, for folks that are used to pop rock and whatnot, you'll say, oh, this is rock, this is country, this is hip hop, this is folk. But, genres get very nichey, like this is Appalachian, lower street folk. Electronic music is so worse. It's like you put a slightly different groove. It's like you're doing a chick, 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 and you change that to chick, 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 with that little drop out there, and suddenly it's a new scene.
Yes, and yeah, but what is nice also with the open mic event is that it's electronic music to listen to, so it's not necessarily electronic dance music. If I perform in a bar or in a club, then you need to have a very energetic music because people are here, they will be dancing or they will be drinking and talking to each other. So you need something energetic so that you carry over, people doing something else. But in this event, and you can do ambient because people are coming, like in a concert to listen to it.
I think that's where Billboard's coming from, is they've decided that electronic music is only dance music and only certain genres of dance music, which I think is unfortunate because electronic music is a very broad category, and there's space in between avant-garde art music and pop music and dance music, and so I'm always hesitant about this sort of separation.
Yeah, well, if you go to Bandcamp, you'll find plenty indie artists, and many indie artists are living out of their music via Patreon, Patreon or YouTube. So, they not necessarily care about the top 10.
That's a whole another interesting topic. We'll have to have you and maybe a panel back on the show where we talk about music funding. When I first moved to Seattle, I did a presentation on music and money, and as you can tell with that title, the lecture was packed, and it was interesting because in Seattle, there's still, I think everything's going to change with the coronavirus, but there was still this feeling like the whole world here was the 90s. Like the 90s was the peak and the 90s was the model. And it seemed like there's so much live music here and it's so band focused. And, the idea of getting signed and the record label is going to front you all the money, that the culture here was so steeped in that mythology that they're really stuck. Where in the San Francisco Bay Area, because of the technology and whatnot, people really embraced Patreon. They really embraced PayPaling your artist a monthly stipend and all these other forms of funding art and music, were commonplace, but I found here it was much more rare. So it's going to be interesting to see if this whole lockdown causes all the artists who have been more focused on live music and playing out and don't really want to set up a Patreon, etc., whether or not they're going to be forced to.
Yes. Yeah, and also, live music is when people are, getting money. With all the streaming, then it's very small, and a label may give you an advance of money, but then they've got many expectations, and then you've got a whole company and it's really behind that your art need to sustain. While you could be your own boss, so if you want to spend a little bit of time in everything that we don't see, you see the song as the final thing, but there's so much things that have happened before. If you want to spend the time there, then you be your own label, you've been your own producer, and once you learn how to do that, then you pick up people to help you, not to drive you.
It's a great point, and it's a total myth. The record label is going to do that for you. The record label stopped doing that in the '90s. You have to do it yourself. You have to pull everything together. The record label might give you. Record labels are like a bank. They're going to loan you money so you can take what you're doing to the next level as an investment towards a return. That's what a record label is since the '90s. If you're thinking about a record label any differently, you are living in the 60s and 70s, maybe a bit of the 80s. So a lot of people up here are like, how do I get signed? And it's like, why would you want to get signed? Because even if you get signed to label, you still have to spend that money in the right way that promotes you, your brand, and your band. You still have to do the work.
Sometimes I think about it, like a tech company, with venture capitalists, and you got your series of funding. So you've got an idea, you want to start a company, and then you go to see some VC, and then they invest into your company. But so they will invest in various stage, but they're expecting you to do result. And if you don't make this result, then they'll pick up a new CEO. So you may be the founder with the idea, but if you're not getting them the result, then
and unlike
they'll do something about it, and they expect you return on the money.
And unlike software VC, I don't think traditionally with record contracts you could just claim bankruptcy. I'm not sure you could do that with VC capital either, but with a record label, whether you made the money or not, you were considered indebted to pay that money back.
Yeah, because I guess also musicians now don't set up the company. That's a label that does it. So you sign as an individual. So there's no time limit. Yep. If you are signing as a company, then you can fold the company and start one again. And the record label will have nothing, just the asset of the previous company.
Another reason not to get signed to a record label, but to start your own record label, because you can make your record label an LLC and get protection in that way. A bunch of I won't name drop on the show, but a bunch of artists that I really love from, say, 1980, to talk about how only a few years ago did they pay off their debt for an album that was a huge blockbuster album that made a ton of money, but they were fronted a lot of money to make those videos and to make those albums of that quality, and it took them, decades to pay off the debt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting business, and I don't know. Sometimes I look at my stats on, if you look at Spotify, and you've got ways to look at the stat, and you realize, if you want to live out of your music from, the streaming, people buying it on streaming service or other stuff, you need to really be in the 1% of this industry.
Yeah.
It's not even the 5 or 10%. You need to be in the 1%.
I showed a nice single pie chart of where all revenue streams come from in the music business. where there's money in the music business, where you're at, and single pie chart. Man, you could hear a pin drop in that room. I'm like, how many pieces of this pie are you engaging with?
Yeah, and no, it's interesting, but that's why also people are doing live concert and Patreon. So people are sponsoring artists more than more doing to have a physical exchange. I'm giving you money for a CD or a vinyl. Here I'm giving you some money every month for you to make your art. I don't care about the production. I know you're producing, but it's not. I'm not buying goods. I'm just contributing to your art.
And this is a whole nother way of thinking about it. It's more of sort of a Renaissance style where you have folks who have some cash available and they would like to support artists, and they found artists that they think are cool or they would like to see develop, and you set up a Patreon, and so you get this patron who's providing you with some, $5 monthly, $10 monthly, $20 monthly, whatnot, so that you can stay focused on developing your creative work.
Yeah. So I haven't gone to Patreon. I've used the community feature on Bandcamp, which has got a kind of a subscription service. It's not as good as Patreon, but I did it on and I've got a few subscribers, and that allow me to have some money to pay for the production of the music. Because sometimes I'll get somebody to master the music, or there's always some cost involved. So I'd like to be kind of in the show, in the stuff that I say money neutral. So
Right. And I know
I don't want to spend money to entertain people. But it's okay if I don't earn money to entertain people.
Yeah, I need to. I have that on my laundry list of different services I need to get set up, not only for the show, but for future releases, and make sure they're coming out on a regular basis. I'm going to quickly, don't know where I put the phone here. And I don't know if folks have stayed after with us. Interesting. It's funny. Folks are definitely joining in over time. I was kind of thinking, okay, this is from 5 to 6. Everybody is 5 to 6. Everybody will join around the same time. But I still see occasionally folks joining. I'm gonna.
Yeah, sometimes you wonder, should I do a live marathon, 8 hours? Because people, they go on Facebook and YouTube and then randomly, and then they see the announcement and they say, "Oh, I'm gonna check it."
Yeah, it's a good question. So this series and this weekly show, a friend of mine asked me to start it based on a performance I did, I think 4 weeks ago now, for Balanced Breakfast, and I wanted to get opportunity to not only show my work and to talk about my history of my work and whatnot, but to have a guest every week, someone that I've engaged with, worked with on a song, but certainly inspired me and is a part of the web of what I've done, and for them, for me to show them to my audience.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me. The cross collaboration are always interesting.
Absolutely. I can't tell from Facebook how many people are actually watching. According to Restream Chat, I see eyeball 7.
Okay.
And
that must be it.
When I go into it, it says KALIB channel connected, eyeball 1. Facebook says error, internal error. So don't know how it's getting that count. So I'm gonna save the music video for next week, and because we really focused on modular synthesis, and this video has nothing to do with that. And wrap it up though, because I know that I promised my wife I would go for a walk after the show, and I can hear that my voice is yet again giving out. I don't know if it's the warmth of this room or anxiety from doing shows, but it seems that the voice does not last with the show. So I'm looking into maybe drinking more water in the day beforehand and whatnot, because I would like to do some more live singing and performing on the show. For those who are still listening, thank you so much for listening in and tuning in this week. Next week is Edward Thomas Keller, a person that my life is woven musically with off and on, and starting in high school, and still has intertwining to go. I'd like to thank Frank for being here and showing his work, and be watching. If you missed part of the show, it will be posted to my Facebook page and the KALIB Duarte, the KALIB YouTube channel, so you can rewatch the beginning and see videos of Frank's performances for the Tiny Desk Contest 2019, 2020. See him on a virtual beach, see him on a real beach. And with that, I will talk to you all next week. Have a good one.
Thanks, KALIB, for inviting me.
Thank you, Frank. Talk again soon.
See you, everybody.